What if your deepest instincts aren't really yours? What if everything you believe about self-control is just an illusion, carefully designed to keep you in check? Have you ever felt like your thoughts weren't entirely your own? Let me know in the comments. Tonight, we're diving into the hidden forces shaping your mind. And once you see them, you'll never unsee them. Suppression of instincts. Have you ever felt that deep urge to scream, to run, to say something you know might not be accepted? To feel something so raw that it almost takes over your body, but then you remember where you are and quickly suppress it? What would happen if we let ourselves feel these urges? What if we stopped suppressing the most primal parts of who we are? We live in a world where control is the ultimate goal. From childhood, we're taught to control our emotions, to behave properly, to fit in. But the more we suppress our true selves, the more disconnected we become from our instincts, the very instincts that have helped us survive for millennia. At a young age, we're taught that certain things are wrong, that feeling anger, fear, or desire is a sign of weakness, of losing control. We're conditioned to believe that these primal urges should be hidden, or worse, eradicated. But what if, in doing so, we're losing touch with our essence, the core of what makes us truly human? When we suppress our instincts, we're not just ignoring feelings, we're denying the very forces that drive us. The desire for love, for connection, for freedom. These aren't weaknesses. They are the building blocks of our identity. They are the forces that help us grow, push boundaries, and thrive in a complex world. And yet, society teaches us to suppress them. Think about fear for a moment. Fear is often viewed as something to avoid, a sign of vulnerability. But what if I told you fear is actually a protective mechanism, an instinct that's kept us safe since the dawn of time? In the past, fear meant survival. When our ancestors faced danger, fear helped them react quickly. Fight, flight, or freeze. In today's world, fear doesn't always look like a wild animal attacking us, but it's still there, driving us to protect ourselves. And yet, we're taught to silence it. We're told, don't be afraid, stay calm. But what happens when we ignore our fear? We become desensitized, disconnected from the natural responses our body is trying to communicate. Emotions like anger, too. What about them? Anger is often seen as a negative emotion, one to be suppressed at all costs. But anger is a signal. It's telling us when something is wrong, when our boundaries are being crossed, when we need to stand up for ourselves or others. If we ignore that instinct, we start to feel powerless, as if we're not allowed to stand up for what we believe in. The more we suppress, the more we feel like we're losing touch with what matters to us. It's in the suppression of these emotions and instincts that we start to feel trapped. Have you ever been in a situation where you felt a deep urge to speak out, but held back because it wasn't the right time? Maybe you felt you couldn't be honest with someone because you feared rejection. Maybe you've experienced moments of frustration that you buried deep inside, because showing anger might make you look weak. This suppression creates a layer of tension inside you, something that gnaws at you, but you can't quite put your finger on it. And here's the thing. Suppressing these natural instincts doesn't make us stronger. It makes us weaker. It creates an inner conflict, a tension between who we are and who we're trying to be. We start to live for others, to seek approval, to fit into a mold that doesn't fit us. But deep down, we still feel the pull of our instincts, the desire to break free and be authentic. What would happen if, for just a moment, we stopped suppressing? What if we allowed ourselves to feel deeply without judgment, to express our anger, fear, or joy without fear of rejection? The world might seem more chaotic, But it would also be more alive. People would connect more authentically, free from the constraints of false politeness and forced control. Now think about this. What if society didn't teach us to suppress our instincts? What if we embraced our fear when it arises, used our anger to fuel change, and allowed our desires to drive us toward a more fulfilling life? Imagine what would happen if we stopped hiding the raw, real parts of ourselves and let them guide us. There's a reason we feel disconnected, even in a world that's more connected than ever. We're not just distant from others, we're distant from ourselves. The more we push aside our instincts, the more we lose touch with the truth of who we are. If you've ever felt like you had to hide a part of yourself, like you couldn't speak your truth or express your feelings freely, pause for a moment and reflect. If this resonates with you, take a moment to leave a like and think about what would happen if we all allowed ourselves to be a little more real with the world around us. When we suppress our instincts, we don't just disconnect from others, we disconnect from ourselves. But it's not too late to find a balance. We don't have to live in constant fear of our own emotions. Instead, we can learn to embrace them, to listen to them, and to allow them to guide us. Because in the end, it's these very instincts, these primal forces, that help us grow, evolve, and ultimately thrive in the world. So ask yourself, what part of yourself have you been suppressing? What instincts have you been pushing aside? And how might your life change if you listen to them? Exploring our dark sides. Have you ever caught yourself feeling a sudden rush of anger that you tried to suppress, thinking to yourself, I shouldn't feel this way? Or perhaps a moment of jealousy swept over you, followed by that familiar wave of guilt. These emotions, aggression, envy, the need to control, are all parts of us, quietly lurking beneath the surface, waiting for their moment to emerge. But what if these hidden feelings aren't as bad as we've been taught to believe? In today's world, we are constantly encouraged to suppress these emotions. We're told to keep calm, be nice, and let things go. But what if, instead of suppressing our darkest impulses, we learn to understand them? What if we embraced these emotions as parts of our humanity, not as flaws or weaknesses, but as essential pieces of who we are? Take aggression. We often associate aggression with violence, with anger out of control. But aggression can also be a powerful force. It's the energy that pushes us to stand up for ourselves when we've been wronged. It's the spark that lights a fire within us to fight for what we believe in. We don't always have to react in destructive ways, but this energy, this instinct, can be a guiding force if we learn to channel it. Imagine this for a moment. What if aggression wasn't something to be feared or rejected, but something to be respected as a tool for personal empowerment? In many cultures, aggression is seen as something negative, something to avoid. But what if it's not about whether the emotion is good or bad? What if it's about how we choose to respond to it? Aggression is not always about fighting or confrontation. It can be about standing tall, facing adversity head-on, and asserting your boundaries. In a world that tells us to be passive and docile, aggression can be the spark of strength we need to navigate challenges. It's in the way we speak up for our needs when the world tries to silence us. It's in the courage we summon when we stand alone in our beliefs, when no one else will. Think about it. When was the last time you felt that powerful, rushing energy inside of you? How did you choose to express it? Did you push it down? Or did you allow it to propel you forward in the direction you truly want to go? Aggression can be transformative if we choose to acknowledge it rather than fearing it. As you reflect on these emotions, aggression, envy, the need for control, take a moment to consider how they show up in your life. Are they hidden beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to surface? Or are they something you actively embrace and understand? Feel free to ponder on this idea while watching. Now, consider envy. It's often called a sin, something that can make us feel small and guilty. Yet in truth, envy is merely a reflection of our desires. It's a signal, a pointer to something that we might want, something that we feel is missing in our lives. The problem is not the envy itself, but how we choose to react to it. Do we bury it beneath layers of shame, or do we use it as a guide to understand our own needs and longings? Envy, when understood, becomes a powerful tool for self-awareness. It's a mirror, showing us what we value, what we believe we lack. But rather than letting it eat away at us with feelings of inferiority, we can use it as a reminder that the things we long for are within our grasp. What if envy isn't about wanting to take something from someone else, but about wanting to create something similar in our own lives? Imagine this. Envy isn't about competition, it's about recognition. When you see someone with what you desire, it's not a reflection of your inadequacy, but of what you have yet to cultivate within yourself. Envy whispers, "You can have this too, if you want it badly enough." It's a powerful motivator when we allow ourselves to see it as such. Instead of fearing envy, we could see it as an opportunity for growth, as a compass pointing us toward our true desires. The next time envy arises within you, ask yourself, what does it reveal about what I really want? How can I move toward that with intention, rather than holding myself back in guilt or shame? And then there's the need for control. We all crave control in our lives. It's natural, right? We want control over our actions, our thoughts, our environment. But why is that? What are we really trying to control? Is it the fear of losing something precious? Or is it the desire to feel safe, to create order in the chaos around us? Control can manifest in many forms. We try to control our circumstances, our relationships, and even our image. We manipulate the narrative of our lives, attempting to mold everything into a picture of stability. But in trying to control every detail, we might inadvertently be denying ourselves the freedom to live fully. What if control is an illusion? What if it's not about managing everything around us, but about learning to accept the unknown, the unpredictable? Maybe true control comes not from holding on tightly, but from letting go just a little. What if we trusted that things will unfold as they should, even when we can't foresee every twist and turn? The more we try to control, the more we risk losing control. We become trapped in our own webs of expectations and plans, all the while missing the beauty of spontaneous, unplanned moments. Control can limit our experiences. It can restrict the flow of life itself. Imagine what would happen if you allowed yourself to surrender just a little. If you embraced the unknown, knowing that it holds surprises you could never have imagined. True peace comes not from controlling every aspect of our lives, but from the acceptance of what is beyond our grasp. And in that acceptance, we find freedom. So ask yourself, when did you last feel the need to control everything around you? What would happen if you let go just a little? What would life feel like without the constant pressure to have it all figured out? The darker aspects of our personality are not to be feared or avoided. They are part of our nature, waiting to be explored. Aggression, envy, and the need for control are not inherently negative. They are parts of what make us human. By acknowledging them, we can gain a deeper understanding of our motivations and desires. So, ask yourself, what part of your darker self have you been avoiding? What would happen if you allowed yourself to experience and explore these emotions instead of pushing them away? The answers may not always be comfortable, but they will help you grow and better understand the forces that shape your life. And perhaps in the process, you'll learn to embrace your full, authentic self, the light and the dark, social conditioning and self-control. In our modern world, every day we are bombarded by social messages from the media, society, and the people around us that shape the way we think, feel, and behave. These messages often teach us to suppress our natural instincts, to conform to a certain image of what is acceptable. But have you ever stopped to wonder how much of your behavior is truly your own, and how much is influenced by external forces? We are constantly conditioned by the world around us. From the moment we wake up, we are exposed to a barrage of expectations. Do this, don't do that. Look this way, feel this way. It starts early. What we wear, how we speak, who we associate with. The culture we grow up in shapes our sense of self and what is considered normal behavior. But here's the thing. Many of these norms are arbitrary. They are not rooted in any natural law. They are socially constructed. Think about it. What makes one thing good and another bad? What defines a successful person in today's society? More often than not, these definitions are influenced by trends, media portrayals, and the opinions of others. Take, for example, the way we deal with emotions. Anger, jealousy, and even sadness are often viewed as weaknesses in our culture. We are told to stay calm, be rational, don't show weakness. But are these emotions really bad? Or are we simply conditioned to think of them as such? These are natural human responses to the world around us, yet we suppress them because society tells us they don't fit into the neat, controlled box of what we're expected to be. The concept of self-control is intricately tied to social conditioning. We are taught, from a very young age, that we must control ourselves, our emotions, our desires, our instincts. We are told that to be successful, we must keep it together, be in control, and not let anything, especially our impulses, get the better of us. But why is self-control held in such high regard? Is it truly necessary for a fulfilling life, or is it just a tool for maintaining order in a society that values conformity? Think about how much of your daily behavior is shaped by these outside forces. From the clothes you wear to the way you express your thoughts, how much of that is truly you, and how much is shaped by the pressures of social expectations. We may not even realize how deeply social conditioning affects us, how much of our personality, our desires, and our actions are molded by others' ideals. Do you notice how much your daily behavior is influenced by external forces? Take a moment to think about it, and see how many of your actions are truly yours, and how many are reactions to the world around you. As we continue to explore this idea, let's look at how media plays a significant role in shaping our behavior. Advertisements, TV shows, and social media platforms often depict an idealized version of life, a life that we are encouraged to aspire to. These portrayals create a disconnect between reality and fantasy, causing us to compare our lives to others and measure our worth based on external standards. In the realm of social media, for example, we constantly see perfect versions of others, filtered photos, curated content, and lives that seem flawless. But these are just illusions. Social media feeds on our insecurities, encouraging us to compare ourselves to others, and then feel inadequate when we don't measure up. It's a never-ending cycle of external influence that suppresses our true selves. This constant comparison, this need to keep up, creates a mental state where self-control becomes a matter of following these external expectations. We start to control ourselves not for our own well-being, but to conform to a set of standards that are not our own. But at what cost? When we suppress our instincts to meet these expectations, we lose sight of who we truly are. And in that loss, we start to feel disconnected from our real selves. What if we stopped looking at others' lives as the benchmark for our own? What if we embraced our unique journey without the pressure to conform? True self-control isn't about suppressing our emotions or desires. It's about understanding what is important to us as individuals and choosing to act in alignment with those values, not with society's imposed ideals. Social conditioning doesn't just affect the way we behave, but it also shapes the way we perceive ourselves. It creates a kind of internalized judgment, where we are constantly critiquing our actions and emotions based on what society expects from us. This judgment often leads to shame and guilt, emotions that reinforce the cycle of control and suppression. But if we were to take a step back, to pause and reflect on our actions without judgment, we might realize that we have been conditioned to believe that our natural instincts are wrong or unacceptable. These instincts, whether they're desires, emotions, or impulses, are simply part of who we are. They are not inherently good or bad, but part of the human experience. The next time you feel the pressure to conform, to suppress your emotions or desires, take a moment to pause and reflect. Ask yourself, is this truly my choice? Or am I reacting to something outside of myself? True self-control comes not from following society's rules, but from understanding and accepting your own instincts and learning how to express them in a way that aligns with your authentic self. When we start to live with more awareness of the external forces that shape us, we can begin to take back control of our lives, not through suppression, but through understanding and acceptance of who we truly are. And that is where true freedom begins. What if we embrace our instincts? Imagine a world where you and everyone around you are free to embrace the full spectrum of their instincts, without fear, without shame, and without judgment. What if, instead of suppressing our natural impulses, we accepted them as part of who we are? What would life look like if we could shed the chains of social conditioning and live in harmony with our true selves? In this alternate reality, picture a society where our most basic instincts are not only accepted, but celebrated. The very things we've been taught to suppress, anger, desire, passion, and even vulnerability, are no longer seen as weaknesses, but as sources of strength, creativity, and authenticity. In this world, we don't fear our raw emotions. Anger isn't an outburst that disrupts, but a call to action, a desire to right wrongs. Desire isn't a shameful impulse, but a spark of creativity and motivation that drives us to pursue what we truly want. Vulnerability isn't weakness, but a doorway to connection, empathy, and understanding. What if every time you felt a surge of emotion, whether it's frustration, longing, or joy, you didn't bottle it up or hide it? What if you let that energy flow, unencumbered by the fears of judgment or failure? Do you feel like your true emotions are sometimes hidden behind a mask, just waiting to be set free? If so, gently let your mind wander on that thought for a second. Consider how our lives are shaped when we repress our instincts. Society has taught us to bottle up these powerful forces, to put on masks, to appear calm, collected, and in control. But what if this control is actually the thing that holds us back? What if by suppressing our instincts, we've been disconnecting ourselves from the very forces that make us human? The more we try to control our impulses, the more fragmented we become, like a puzzle missing pieces of our own soul. Now, think about this for a moment. When we allow ourselves to acknowledge and express our instincts, something changes. We no longer walk through life wearing a mask, hiding our true feelings. Instead, we become more in tune with our own inner rhythm. We begin to understand that our instincts aren't chaotic forces to be controlled, but essential guides that point us toward deeper truths about ourselves. Now, imagine that by allowing ourselves to embrace these instincts, we begin to experience something profound: inner harmony. The more we trust ourselves, the more in balance we become. It's not about abandoning control completely, but about understanding that control doesn't come from repression, but from acceptance. When we accept our instincts, we stop fighting with ourselves. We stop feeling like we're at war with our own feelings. Instead, we find peace by aligning our actions with our true desires and emotions. Consider the moment when you feel a deep, gut-level sense of rightness in what you're doing. It's when you stop second-guessing yourself and start acting in accordance with what feels real, not what you've been told is real. It's as though you've removed the noise, the distractions, and you can finally hear your true voice. That voice, your instincts, is your most authentic self. And when you listen to it, everything begins to fall into place. As you begin to embrace your instincts, something else happens too. You begin to experience a deeper connection with others. No longer do you have to pretend to be someone you're not. You shed the need for validation because you no longer depend on external approval to feel whole. You start forming relationships that are built on authenticity, where both you and the other person are free to be yourselves. Imagine being in a relationship where both people are open about their desires, their needs, and their vulnerabilities, without fear of judgment. The walls that normally keep people separate begin to crumble. You no longer have to hide your true feelings or force yourself to fit into a mold that doesn't suit you. Instead, you connect on a deeper level, one based on mutual respect and understanding. Take a moment. How often do you find yourself pretending to be something you're not, just to fit in? Reflect on that for a moment. Imagine living in a world where your true self is fully accepted and where you're free to express every part of who you are, no matter how messy, how imperfect, or how wild. Would you feel more at peace, more alive? Would you feel more connected to the world around you? In this hypothetical world, embracing your instincts isn't just about feeling free. It's about living authentically, shedding the burdens of conformity, and creating deeper connections with yourself and others. It's about stepping into a life where you can truly be you. No apologies, no excuses. The freedom that comes with that is unimaginable. And yet, it's within our reach. Conclusion. The journey to self-acceptance. After exploring repressed instincts, dark sides of personality, and the impact of society on our freedom, it is important to reflect on what happens when we truly begin to accept ourselves as we are. After all, accepting your instincts and dark sides does not mean destruction or chaos, but rather an opportunity to open the way to true inner harmony. Imagine that you are no longer in a constant fight with yourself, that your instincts and emotions are not enemies, but an integral part of you. The question is, are you ready to let go of fear and allow yourself to be true? This is a difficult but important step. Take a moment to reflect on how embracing yourself could change your life. What would happen if you let go of the need to control everything?